Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Jason Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson, and welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast Geek History Lesson, where we take one character, construct, or villain from popular culture and teach you everything that you need to know about them.
Yes, and today is all about Clayface. Now, he is a muddy Batman villain. He's made of clay, hence the name. He has a face, hence the name. But I wanted to tell you that he is a Batman villain that has been in many different versions of Batman media, the animated series. He was in an episode of Gotham towards the end of their season called Legion of Horribles, a terrible title. And he also is now the main part of the hero team in Detective Comics number 934, which actually comes out this week and is part of the DC Rebirth event.
Ooh.
So that's the whole reason why we're talking about Clayface this week. And I want to let you know that you should stick around, because after the history of Clayface is done, we're going to have a discussion about Clayface with Gotham Academy, Batgirl, and Black Canary writer Brendan Fletcher.
What?
Yeah.
So cool.
All right, now, before we get into the lesson, as I said, be warned, there have been many different Clayfaces, and we're going to touch on the history of all of them a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Now, on to the podcast with our first section.
Yes, the first section of this podcast is the 10-cent origin, where we give you all the basic constructs, creators, and powers of Clayface today.
Now, a lot of this lesson is going to be dealing with the very first Clayface, because, we always want to start with the origin is. So, the first appearance of a Clayface in comics was in Detective Comics number 40 in June of 1940.
Wow.
And it was Basil Karlo, the first Clayface.
Yes.
Now, this first Clayface was created by Bob Kane. Now, I'm going to tell you the alter ego of some of the many different Clayfaces.
Please, lay them on me.
Basil Jamal Karlo,
Okay.
Matthew D. Hagen, Preston Bill Payne, Sandra Fuller, Cassius Payne, Dr. Peter Malley,
Okay.
Todd Russells, and Johnny Williams. I don't know if you can tell, but there have been a lot of Clayfaces.
Wow, I only thought there were 4 Clayfaces, so there are many more than I anticipated.
There are too many Clayfaces right now.
That's
too
a
many.
song.
Yep.
Too many Clayfaces.
Okay. Some of the groups they've been involved with, the various Clayfaces, have been the Society, the Mudpack, the Injustice League, the Anti-Justice League, and, as I said again, the Mudpack.
The Anti-Justice League.
Yep. Now, I just want to tell you what Clayface, depending on which version of Clayface he is, has many different powers.
Okay.
Here are some of them. They have the malleable clay-like body, which means that their body is made of thick mud-like material. They can change shape at will and take the shape of many animals and people. They have size alteration, which means that they can change their size to fit any need. He's expanded large enough to fill entire rooms, but also tiny enough to slip through sewer grates.
Wow.
Density control. Clayface can make their body as hard as a rock to smash through cars or buildings, or they can make themselves a liquid form to suffocate people.
Gross.
Superhuman strength, they have that. They have superhuman durability, which means they can withstand bullets and heavy punches. And power replication, which means that certain Clayfaces have the ability to mimic various superpowers.
Wow.
Yeah, including the ability to replicate somebody's DNA. That comes up in a later story.
Wow.
And they also have a corrosive or melting touch sometimes, which means that if they touch somebody, they can kill them immediately or burn or melt through walls.
Okay.
So there you go. And of course, the main original Clayface's main ability, I think, is acting.
Yes.
There you go.
And it's definitely acting.
Acting. All right, now we're going to move into the next section of the podcast, the Meet Cute.
And Meet Cute is the part of the podcast that we stole from romantic comedy writing, where we tell you where we first met this character and how cute it was.
Ashley, where did you first remember encountering or meeting or cuting with Clayface?
Well, I wouldn't say that Clayface is particularly cute, but I would definitely say it was Batman the Animated Series. There is a Christmas episode which either was adapted into a comic or was a comic first. I don't know. And Batgirl is shopping.
I'm pretty certain it was a comic first.
I think so. Batgirl's shopping at not a Macy's.
Not a Macy's.
Not a Macy's.
It's my favorite store.
Yeah.
Not a Macy's.
And Bullock is there being the mall Santa, and he's on a stakeout with, I think it's Renee Montoya.
It is Montoya, yeah.
And she's dressed as this cute little elf, and there's all these, Barbara sees all these little nugget kids, and they're stealing from people, and it turns out that they're little Clayface nuggets, and they jump into the giant Clayface, and then she changes into, there's a very famous sequence where she runs and she's changing her clothes.
She changes in the middle of a crowd. And nobody notices her.
And then I think on TV they make her go to the change room, and she changes in like a dressing room. But I know that was like a big bone of contention. So she goes outside onto the not Macy's Day like Christmas garden celebration thing, and they fight there, and she takes him down by electrocuting him with a giant Santa.
She also kicks him in the face and like a giant kerspoosh.
Yeah, it makes a really gross sound effect, but the coolest part of that episode is that it is probably Batgirl in the animated series. It's probably her best episode because she doesn't get a ton of stories where she's on her own being that capable. She's very much a supporting player.
And that episode is part of a vignette.
It is a vignette.
Yeah.
I think it's with the Harley and Poison Ivy when they capture Bruce Wayne and they spend all his money on his credit cards.
And then Batman and Robin with the Jokers on New Year's Eve.
Yeah. So it's like a three-parter. But that was the first time I ever remember Clayface was being the villain of that
Holiday
episode.
Nights.
I think you're correct. There we
yeah.
go. So where did you first meet one of the Clayfaces?
I'm the same way. I remember first remembering or knowing who Clayface was because of the animated series. And the reason why I remember who he is because of who voiced him. Ashley, do you know who voiced Clayface in Batman the Animated Series?
Ron Perlman?
You are correct.
There we go.
It was Ron Perlman. And I knew Ron Perlman back then. He wasn't Hellboy yet.
He was the Beast?
He was Beast from the Linda Hamilton CBS show Beauty and the Beast, where Beast lived in the sewers with a bunch of people and Linda Hamilton had a thing for cat people.
Awesome.
So
he was a cat people?
He's sort of like a half lion dude if you look at his face. That's how they kind of made him. But it was always weird because she wanted to kiss on him, stuff like that. And you were like, oh, you must really like cats, lady. Okay.
The epitome of a crazy cat lady.
But that's how I knew who Ron Perlman was, is because of that show. And so when I heard his voice on the show, I immediately was like, oh, that's Beast.
That's cool.
So I also remember another story. It was Clayface has a pretty decent storyline in No Man's Land, which we'll talk about later.
Yes.
And that also made a big impression on me as well. So let's move on into the Complicated History 101, or 101 times 101, I should say, because there are so many different Clayfaces of Clayface.
Yes, the History 101 is the main meat of the lesson where Professor Jason will lay out this Clayfacey goodness meal for us to consume.
I don't know if I'd call it a goodness meal, but let's see what happens.
Look,
here.
I mixed my metaphors.
Now, I'm going to state this out here, students.
Caveat.
Yes. Clayface is the ultimate representation of a one-off villain.
Okay.
He shows up, he gets beat, he disappears. He shows up, he gets beat, he disappears. How does he get out of prison? How does he get to the next storyline? It doesn't matter because no one will ever tell you.
Okay.
That is most Clayface stories. Even through the multiple Clayfaces, it's the same beat.
Yes, and we've encountered this with a couple of our lessons on villains in the past. So it's not wholly surprising.
No. There's not a lot of depth to him.
Okay.
And there's not a lot of great stories of Clayface either, I think, from my research.
But he looks really cool.
He has such a great look. I think he's a great visual villain. But I'm going to tell you as much as I could find and as much as what I think is interesting.
Great. So I'm excited.
We're going to do this. We're going to focus on each Clayface individually. So I'm going to tell you everything about the first Clayface, and then we're going to go back to the second Clayface. Now, there have been times where the Clayfaces have met each other.
Yes, there have been.
So you're going to hear about that adventure or tale a couple of times.
Okay.
As I go through each individual's history.
Cool.
So there you go. Now, the most important Clayface is, of course, the original, Basil Karlo. He appeared, as I said, in Detective Comics number 40. Bob Kane was a movie buff, Batman creator Bob Kane, and he states that the character was partially inspired by Lon Chaney Sr.'s version of the Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, cool.
And the name of the character comes from Boris Karloff and Basil Rathbone. Now, Ashley...
Basil Rathbone.
Who is Boris Karloff and Basil Rathbone for people that out there that don't know?
Boris Karloff is the most famously known for Universal monster movies, especially his portrayal of Frankenstein's monster. Although he does have a much more storied career than that, but that is the visual that will come to mind. And Basil Rathbone is probably the most famous, arguably the most famous on-screen Sherlock Holmes from the first half of the 20th century.
I would say he is the most famous on screen, even now.
I think some people would argue Jeremy Brett with the TV series from the 80s.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll give you that.
But Basil Rathbone, I would say, was the first person to play him on screen who truly brought Sherlock Holmes into the American movie world.
Okay.
And he has 2 stars on the Walk of Fame.
And as you can see how he took Basil and Karloff and made Basil Karlo.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you about Basil Karlo.
Okay.
He is an actor who is driven insane in anger when he hears that a remake of the classic horror film that he starred in, called The Terror, was going to be shot without him.
Okay.
Now, here's a funny fact. He was going to be an advisor on the film. He was going to be an advising producer, but he wasn't going to be the actor.
Dude, but you would have made so much more money doing that.
And it drove him crazy. Now, that just tells me that Basil Karlo could not handle the modern Hollywood remake machine.
Oh my God, no.
So he donned the costume of the film's villain in The Terror, and the film's villain in The Terror was called Clayface. And he embarked on a murder spree among the cast of the remake.
He's like, hey, you're an actor? Yeah, stab.
Well, he begins killing the actors that were cast in the remake in the order that his original character killed them in the first movie. So I appreciate that he at least sticks to the continuity of his own movie. Yes, he has a very good attention to he follows the script like a good actor.
Yeah. That's very funny.
So last, he plans to murder the actor playing the new Clayface killer, but of course he's foiled by Batman and Robin.
Yay!
Yeah.
We love Batman and Robin. They're the best.
He reappears in Detective Comics number 49 of March of 1941.
Okay.
After he's in a prison ambulance, and he is riding in it, and it plunges off a cliff.
Holy crap.
Now, he dons the mask of Clayface. Now, I want to just point out, again, I didn't quite make this clear. I want to just state it. This Clayface has no powers.
No. It's just a costume.
It's a costume from a movie. Okay?
Okay.
It's just like a funny mask with a suit. That's it.
I'm sorry. He has the power of acting.
Action. He plunges off the cliff, right? Escapes from the prison hospital van.
Sure.
And he dons the mask of Clayface and decides to target Bruce Wayne's fiancée, Julie Madison.
Julie Madison.
Now, Ashley, who is Julie Madison?
I have no idea who Julie Madison. Bruce Wayne's fiance, apparently.
Yes, he is. She is Bruce Wayne's fiance. Now, fun fact. She first showed up in Detective Comics number 31. She predates.
Oh, she predates?
Clayface. She is a Bob Kane, Bill Finger creation. She is the lady that Elle McPherson plays in Batman and Robin, the George Clooney bad version.
If you say so.
Yeah, that's who Julie Madison is. As I call it, the Schumacher masterpiece.
Yeah.
She's basically kind of disappeared from continuity. She's been mentioned here and there, but
she'd be a great character to bring back.
Yes, I agree. I think so.
Copyright Geek History Lesson.
So the original Clayface targets Julie.
Okay.
But of course, Batman and Robin are able to beat him again. And as I said, this is going to be a recurring theme in Clayface's life.
All right.
So because of this, let's skip ahead a bit and let's only cover his important parts.
The
important parts of the butt.
Important parts of Clayface.
Now, remember how I told you that there are multiple Clayfaces in the comic?
Yes, I do. I can't take you saying Clayfaces.
Is Clayface? Is that the plural of Clayface?
I believe it is Clayface.
Clayface, okay. Clayface. Well, I'm going to mention one of the alternate Clayface right now.
Okay.
We're gonna stick with Boris, as I said, but we'll come back and we'll give the other Clayface's history later on. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, old Boris was sitting in a prison hospital. That tends to happen to him a lot.
Yeah, well, he's old.
Yep. When the current Clayface at the time, Sandra Fuller, visited him.
Okay.
Now, she has shape-changing clay ability, so she actually has superpowers. Mm-hmm. And Carlo proposed an alliance between all living Clayfaces to kill Batman. Mm-hmm. Now, there were like 4 at this time.
Yeah.
And they decided to call themselves the Mudpack.
That's true.
Now, Ashley, you have had to review this story for the Major Spoilers podcast. Majorspoilers.com. You should go check that out.
Sure have.
Now, without giving away the ending, can you give us a basic overview or tell us your impressions of it?
My impression of it is that it's not great.
Okay.
If you like Clayface and you want to know more about the various incarnations, this is actually probably your best one-stop shop for that.
The one-stop shop for Clayface.
For Clayface. Without giving away the ending and kind of in 3 sentences or less, the basic kind of plot of the Mudpack is that Boris Karloff who totally just goes around collecting all the Clayfaces who are Sandra, Matt Hagen, and Preston Payne.
Preston Payne, yep. We'll get to all them later.
Right. They team up in this old theater that used to show his movies. They capture Batman and they fight. That's kind of your basic tenet of that. And this is Sandra's first major kind of event in the DC universe. And
I want to tell everybody right now that fun fact for the story, Matt Hagen, the Clayface that we'll touch on later, the second Clayface, is actually dead in this story.
Yes, he's like a statue.
And we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Carlo, the original Clayface, tricked all of his allies in the Mudpack. And he was able to imbue himself with samples from Preston Payne, Matt Hagen, and Sandra Fuller, the other Clayfaces, and he gained the abilities to shapeshift and melt with a touch.
It's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah, he thus declares himself the ultimate Clayface. But he, of course, was defeated by the combined efforts of Batman and Looker of the Outsiders.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Looker. He calls her on the phone and she's in bed and it's weird.
Yep. Well, Batman and Looker were able to overload the ultimate Clayface's abilities, making him melt into the ground where he sunk into the Earth's crust when he lost his controls of his powers, where he is deep, deep, deep below the crust of the Earth, and he's lost forever.
They were like, no one's ever going to write this guy again.
Nope. And that's the last time that we saw Boris Karloff.
Aw, tragic.
Or was it?
Dun, bum, bum.
You see, there was a little Batman event that came along called Cataclysm.
Yes.
Ashley, what is Cataclysm about?
A big earthquake.
That's basically it. An earthquake hits Gotham.
And then I'll let you do that.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Now, when the earthquake happened, he was able to come back to the surface, right?
Oh, because of the cracks.
Yep. Now, he was able to capture Batman and was about to kill him.
That's right.
When he got into a feud with Mr. Freeze about which villain should have the right to kill the Cape Crusader.
Well, it's an important question.
Yes.
It really is.
And with that distraction, Batman was able to free himself and soundly defeated both of them.
He's like, bye, girls, bye.
Well, he was like, why did you guys start monologuing? You could have, Boris, you're an actor. I know you love to monologue, but like, you could have killed me if you didn't monologue.
To kill or not to kill.
Yep.
And then he just doesn't even listen to Batman.
To freeze or not to freeze.
Oh my God, I wish.
Cool party, Carlo. So like I said, as you've noticed, Boris is not too good at his job.
He's not. But he's funny.
Yep. And then we move on to No Man's Land. Ashley, what's No Man's Land?
So following the events of Cataclysm, the United States government is like, help Gotham? Nah, let's just declare it martial law and like, good luck, guys, and we'll build a wall around it.
Yeah, let's just build
a little Trumpian, if I'm going to be honest.
Let's build a wall about it. Let's rebuild nothing, because that's going to cost a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, and then it deals a lot with the gang wars and the politics therein.
Now, in No Man's Land, Carlo, he holds Poison Ivy prisoner. Poison Ivy during the storyline is in charge of producing fresh vegetables for the remaining people in the city.
She's kind of a good guy. It's really neat.
And she lives in Robinson Park, which is a reference to the old Batman creator.
It's a reference to me.
Yep. Poison Ivy eventually battles and defeats Carlo with Batman's help, but she sinks him deep into the ground underneath the Earth's crust.
Hang on. Didn't we just do that to him?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. But we did it like 20 years before.
That's true. You're not wrong.
And Boris is trapped in the ground again.
Oh, no.
Come on, Boris.
Oh, no. Poor Boris.
Now, Boris somehow escapes.
Of course.
How? We don't know.
There was another earthquake.
And he shows up with the Secret Society of Villains. And then he finally gets into a really interesting storyline involving Wonder Woman.
Oh.
Now, Boris sought to increase his powers by absorbing Wonder Woman. Now, at the time, Wonder Woman's origin was about being a clay construct that the gods gave life to, right?
Yeah, she was kind of a golem, if we're going to be
she wasn't a demigod yet. Now, this would give him an amount of power that basically gave him invulnerability and almost immortality. Now, he was successful in absorbing some of the heroine's powers, and this actually caused Diana to regress in her age and appearance, kind of beginning to look like Donna Troy.
Wow, interesting.
Now, eventually he loses because he is returned to normal because Wonder Woman, young Wonder Woman now, and Donna are able to trick Clayface into entering a train car with Wonder Woman inside. Although Wonder Woman at the time is disguised herself as Wonder Girl Donna.
That's cool.
Clayface goes inside the train car thinking it's Donna, not knowing it's Wonder Woman.
It's Diana.
Yep. Now, Donna outside the train car uses the lasso of truth and swings the carriage around at super speed, turning it into a mystical centrifuge. Yep.
Physics and magic.
Yep. Causing the clay that Clayface had taken from Wonder Woman to split away from him and reemerge with Wonder Woman.
That's really comic booky, but it actually sounds kind of cool.
Well, I think it's a smart idea to put Boris against the other hero that's made of clay. And, you know, you're probably sitting there thinking, you're like, how does this work? Well, my explanation to you would be like, comics!
Exactly.
Boris was also later part of Libra's team during the final crisis, of course. And so he had to do some stuff with that. And that's where Libra forced him to blow up the Daily Planet, injuring Lois, which was a big storyline in Final Crisis because Clark was worried that Lois was going to die.
Yeah.
So, and then the New 52 happens for Boris.
Okay.
I almost said Borloff.
Borloff Carr.
Ashley, what's the New 52?
The New 52 is an event from 2011 where DC rebooted the universe following the events of Flashpoint, and everybody kind of started back at zero or 5 years later than zero.
Yep. Including Boris. Boris gets a new origin in the New 52.
Let's talk about it.
Now, in the New 52, Boris wants to become an actor.
An actor.
Yep. And for several years, Boris Karloff, he worked hard in acting, but was told by casting directors that he wasn't ever going to be good enough to get a leading role.
Look, casting directors don't give you that many notes back.
Nope. Karloff eventually turned to the crime boss, the Penguin, for help, like any actor would.
Yeah. He's theatrical.
You're just like, hey, I can't get this acting job. You know who I'm going to talk to? The mob.
Yeah. That guy what looks like a bird.
Now, the Penguin offered Basil a hunk of clay, which he claimed was the source of power for a tribe of Navajo skinwalkers in exchange for Karloff's services.
Wow, that's a leap.
Yep. Now, Basil took the clay home, and even as he examined it, the substance leaped up and entered his body, going inside his bloodstream and rewriting the fabric of his body.
Wow, that's super comic booky.
Yep. He now had a shape-changing ability, and he used this to become the best actor in the world.
Yay!
I'm not lying there.
I know.
That's actually what happens. As he got better in his acting, the clay inside him evolved as well. And he actually gained the new ability to copy the DNA of anyone he touched and file it away in his memory to be retrieved at any time.
If you're an actor, that would be a great skill to have.
Yep. Now, outside of his acting, Karloff was employed by the Penguin, according to their deal, and he participated in many criminal schemes. This was something that Karloff eventually, he hated at first, but eventually he grew to love.
Cool.
But soon the actor lost sight of who he really was until he became just obsessed with violence and rage, and he lost control of his anger, and it was harder to hold his shape. And before long, Karloff's temper destroyed his career when he assaulted a director who berated him for ad-libbing on set. Now no one was willing to hire him, and thus he became a nobody actor.
Aww.
And Karloff fully committed to his life of crime as Clayface.
Okay.
Now, Clayface once imitated Bruce Wayne, having mutated to that point again, as I said, where he can take a single fiber of DNA. He took Bruce Wayne's DNA and started robbing banks as Bruce Wayne.
Wow.
Yep. And Clayface eventually went after Bruce Wayne himself, disguised as Lucius Fox, and he ambushed the billionaire in his office at Wayne Enterprises until Batman beat him again.
Heck yeah, Batman.
Sound forever? Or sound familiar?
Sounds familiar forever.
Another reason why I said forever is because up next comes Forever Evil. Ashley, what's Forever Evil?
Forever Evil is a DC event about villains.
Yeah, basically the crime syndicate from Earth 3 comes to the Earth and they reveal Dick Grayson's ability.
Oh, that's right.
And then they beat up the Justice League.
Yeah.
So the villains are in control.
Yeah.
Now, during that event, there was an Arkham War miniseries because all the people of Arkham got let out. And it was basically about the supervillains dividing up Gotham because they were let out by the crime syndicate. Now, Clayface was given a portion of Gotham City, which he marked as his own by drowning it in clay. And eventually, Clayface was splattered in defeat by Bane, who declared himself the winner of Arkham War.
I wish I knew what sound effect they used for that. How do you spell that?
SBCZZTHP
Headcanon accepted. One of my favorite things about Clayface is this is the sound effects.
Yeah, fun.
So, Mr. Bane, I understand that you have declared yourself the winner of the Gotham War. Lois Lane from the Daily Planet.
Hello, Lois.
Can you?
How are you?
I'm doing. You're speaking very slowly into my microphone. Can you tell us what your strategy was to defeat Mr. Clayface?
I knew that I needed a Swiffer to defeat Clayface.
What?
You see those? It's because your laughing is making it hard for me to speak, Lois.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's that collar is so ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It's summer. You see, when you're fighting a Mudpack, you need a Swiffer. My Bane voice is on point today. Isn't it? I think it's not.
I love it so much.
I don't know. I have to go wash my hands, Lois.
Oh, yeah, you do look quite dirty, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Take control of your soap while washing. Bane out.
He drops the mask off his face. Oh, man.
Thanks to Bane for stopping by.
Yeah, we love Bane.
Oh, my God. I don't know why.
Oh, that was so great.
I love that Lois Lane was alive and talking to Bane. That was cool.
Well, you know what? Who else would be interviewing
So
Bane?
after Forever Evil, Carlo decided to escape Gotham, but he was abducted by a group of cultists who freezed him and then used a portion of his magical clay body of their ritual to revive Morgan Le Fay.
That's dumb.
Yep. But the cultists succeeded in bringing back the witch from the dead, and Clayface was left partially destroyed and without his memory. But luckily, he was rescued by Ragman.
Yay.
Ragman's a very minuscule DC character, was once part of the Shadow Pact. He's green, has rags. That's all you need to know.
The end.
Now, Ragman brought Clayface back to the hero's apartment, plopped him in his bathtub, and wanting to avoid going back to crime, Clayface actually stayed with his new friend Ragman for a long time, and Ragman tried to give him a new civilian identity.
Interesting.
But soon his full memory returned, and Clayface became evil, and he was once again detained and returned to his cell at the new Arkham Manor, which was Wayne Manor had now been turned into the new home for the Arkham Asylum.
Correct.
Now, when Joker returned to Gotham with an in-game for Batman, basically Jokerizing the entire Gotham City, he actually managed to Jokerize all the inmates and guards and people of Gotham City, with the exception of Bane, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, and Clayface. Now, some of these villains, they met up in the Jokerized city, and the criminals banded together to avoid being ripped apart by the mindless Joker zombies.
They were all smiling and stuff.
Now, Batman was prepared to get the antidote out of Joker's spine because that was the cure for this disease, and he gathered the group of criminals left and convinced them to help aid him. And Clayface and the other rogues actually helped Batman because they knew that the Joker had gone too far this time.
Well, that's every time.
Yep. Now, also in the New 52, Boris also has a daughter.
Aww.
Named Catherine Carlo.
Oh.
Who is actually Map's roommate. Map is a member of Gotham Academy.
Yes.
And you will eventually find out that she is an aspect of Clayface, a piece of him. And we'll talk more about that once we get Brendan Fletcher on here.
What?
And speaking of aspects of ourself and Brendan Fletcher, you know, there's always plenty of aspects out there that we try to gather up, put together, put into inside a bathtub so we can regain our memories. And we can do all that with your help over at patreon.com/Jawiin.
We sure can.
Yeah, that's right. That's where for a single donation per month, you can help support this podcast and all its server costs and everything. And you know what? You're not going to get nothing for your cost. We're going to make sure to give you plenty of Swiffer sheets so you can beat Clayface at any time you want to declare an Arkham War.
Well, thank goodness.
And how we're going to do that is like with extra episodes, like exclusive Geek History Lesson episodes that you can get for $3 to support a month called Geek History Lesson Extra, where we're going to talk in depth on all kinds of things. This week's going to be pretty special because we're talking to Brendan about the creation of Gotham Academy. And you can only hear that on patreon.com/Jawiin. So get on over there and support the show. And we thank all our patrons who help make this show possible.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yep. Now let's talk about another Clayface. Let's talk about Matt Hagen.
Let's.
Now, he's generally the Clayface that actually most people talk about before the New 52. And in the animated series, Batman the Animated Series, their Clayface is Matt Hagen.
True, very true.
And fun fact, this Clayface was created by Batman co-creator Bill Finger.
They were each like, you know what's a great name? Clayface. I'm going to make a guy called Clayface. You're going to make a guy called Clayface? My guy's going to be better.
Yeah, I think it was just like, my Clayface is better. My Clayface actually has powers.
Right, and I think maybe Bill Finger won that argument.
A little bit, but let me tell you the second Clayface's origin. It's a little silly. The second Clayface, Matt Hagen, he first appeared in Detective Comics number 298.
Wow.
He was a treasure hunter like Indiana Jones.
Cool.
And he finds a mysterious radioactive pool of protoplasm in a cave.
Okay.
Now, just like any scientist, he decides to get in it.
Was he also that same guy on the Prometheus ship who decided to stick his hand out for the little buggy thing?
They were relatives,
okay.
Yes.
There you go. That would make sense to me.
He, of course, sees protoplasm. He's like, I'm going to take a bath. And he gets transformed into a malleable clay-like form, which can be shaped into almost anything he desires.
Yep.
Hagen actually gleefully begins using his new powers for crime. His powers, however, only prove to be temporary.
Aww.
And he has to return to the pool periodically in order to maintain his powers. Generally, his Clayface powers last about 48 hours. And most of the time, basically, that's about as much of his time as Batman needs to beat him.
So this protoplasm pit is like the Lazarus pit of Clayfaces. You have to keep going back to make sure that your powers sustain.
Yes, exactly. After multiple prison escapes and crime sprees, Hagen eventually copies the pool's protoplasmic jelly in his chemistry studies, and he makes an artificial protoplasm. But it actually only allows him 5 hours of Clayface's powers instead of a full 48 hours.
They were like, 48 hours is not restrictive enough. 5 hours.
Yep. But sadly, Matt Hagen is eventually killed in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yep. Which, of course, is the storyline where the Anti-Monitor decides to eat the universe and then fart out a new one.
This is my favorite description of it ever.
Yep, there you go. And then we get to the Mudpack storyline, as we talked about before, where the other villains who use the name Clayface gather. However, Hagen is dead at this time, and they use his remains to make him a post-mortem member of the gang.
It's weird.
So basically, Clayfaces are creepy in whatever reality they exist in.
True. Very true.
Yep. Now we're going to talk about the third Clayface, Preston Payne.
This is my favorite name of all the Clayfaces, Preston Payne.
Preston Payne. He sounds like an actor.
He sounds presidential, I think.
But he's not an actor.
He's not.
He first appeared in the end of Detective Comics number 477.
Wow.
And he suffers from, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, hyperpituitarism.
Hyperpituitism.
Pituitarism.
It's when your pituitary gland is out of whack.
It's a hormone imbalance. There you go. Now, he works at Star Labs, actually.
Oh, cool.
And he's searching for a cure for his own malady.
Do you think... Great word.
Yep.
Do you think he's going to be on The Flash?
Preston Payne?
Yeah.
No.
Aww.
No. He obtains a sample of, this was when Matt Hagen was still alive, his blood, and he isolates an enzyme which he then introduces into his own bloodstream, thinking it will cure him.
That's dumb.
Although he is able to shape his own appearance, the effect is short-lived, and while on a date, his flesh begins to melt, and when he touches his horrified girlfriend, she completely melts.
What a terrible boyfriend.
Yep. So, of course, what do you think Preston Payne does?
Goes to Star Labs and eats someone else's blood?
No, he builds an exoskeleton anti-melting suit to prevent himself from touching anyone.
Yeah.
But then he learns that he needs to spread his melting contagion onto others to survive. Basically, he starts to feel pain unless he's melting somebody.
He's a flesh-eating virus.
Yep. And during that time, his mental health starts to slip, and he falls in love with a wax mannequin.
That's right.
Yep. He names Helena, thinking she's the only woman that is immune to his touch.
Yeah, and in the Mudpack, like, they have to humor him that she's a real person.
Oh, we'll get to that. During the events of the Mudpack,
there you go. Yeah.
Sandra Fuller, the fourth Clayface, begins masquerading as the hero Looker and visits Payne at Arkham. The same night, he gets into an argument with Helena and unintentionally knocks her head off.
Yes.
Now, Preston thinks he's killed his mannequin, and he goes off on a rampage until he's subdued by asylum guards.
It's actually like the best part of the whole story.
Yep. Now, Fuller, who is still using Looker's appearance, she rescues him and influences him to follow Basil Carlo's commands. Carlo, of course, betrays Fuller, as we learned, and takes sample of her and Payne's blood to inject into himself. Preston Payne finally breaks full of Fuller's control and is about to kill her when she now admits how sorry she is for using him. The two fall in love and go on to live together, the two Clayfaces, leading to Fuller becoming pregnant with their child, Cassius.
I find it distressing that if he is a flesh-eating entity, that he was able to procreate.
Yes, but his procreation will actually become important later.
Yes.
Now, Preston Payne next appears in Justice League Cry for Justice, the really, really bad, terrible series where Prometheus decides to kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Now, he basically is coerced into working for Prometheus, who has threatened the life of his son. Now, Prometheus had actually further mutated Preston Payne, giving him back his old shape-shifting abilities and actually made him work as a decoy for the Justice League. Now, when the Justice League discovered the ruse, an explosive device planted inside Payne's body detonated, and he blew up.
Yep.
And it's actually unknown whether Preston survived that explosion or not.
Ooh, that's an interesting dangling thread to be played with.
And I probably have a feeling it'll probably never be picked up on. So there you go.
You're probably not wrong.
And now we move on to the fourth Clayface, the Lady Clayface.
Lady Mrs. Clayface.
Sandra Fuller.
Yes.
She first appeared in Outsiders number 21. She possesses identical abilities to Matt Hagen, although they are permanent without the requirement of that weird protoplasm sum. And as I said, she has a son with Preston Payne, and that's about all you need to know about her.
Kind of her whole deal.
Now we're going to talk about their son.
Okay.
Cassius Clay Payne.
Cassius.
As you can kind of say, it's a play off of Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. So there you go. Now, he has the new ability of Clay-like powers, which is this. If a piece of him is separated from his body, it can grow a mind of its own, and it mostly thinks it's an unstable form of whatever Cassius wants. And if it becomes bonded with another human, it becomes what we call a clay thing. And that piece can give human Clayface-like abilities, which is soft and becoming soft and malleable and being able to withstand bullets and harm. But it can also manifest Preston Payne's ability to melt objects.
Yes.
So that's interesting because it's the first introduction of this separation of the Clayfacey things.
It's also kind of the deadliest way that you could have a Clayface, or one of the scariest things about him. It makes him a real credible threat besides just someone weird for Batman to fight.
Yes, because there's a really interesting episode of Batman the Animated Series where Tim Drake Robin is talking to this little girl, and you eventually learn the little girl is Clayface.
Yeah.
Which was crazy. Cassius Payne really does nothing of note. All right, so let's move on to other Clayfaces, and I'm going to mention them. They're not really that important, but I'm going to mention them anyway.
All right, let's.
Other Clayfaces include Dr. Peter Claything Malley. You can kind of guess how he becomes a Clayface. Todd Russell's one. Johnny Williams is one. Now, Johnny Williams is an important Clayface for the simple reason that he is the Clayface that we see in the Batman Hush storyline that involves Jason Todd. Now, do you remember how Clayface is involved in that story, Ashley?
Not really, but I know I can see him in my head.
Well, there's a very famous scene in that storyline where Jason Todd shows up with a gun to Tim Drake's head and makes Batman believe that Jason Todd's alive.
Yeah.
Now, this was a big shock. In that Hush storyline, it was revealed that Jason Todd was a Clayface. That's Johnny Williams.
That's right.
Later, it was retconned to, at one moment, it was the real Jason Todd, and then he switched places with Johnny Williams.
Yeah, that's right.
So there you go. And then there's also a Clayface of Japan.
Okay.
Yep. There is. Just go with it.
Okay.
So, okay. Now, in other media, that's it for comic books. In other media, Ashley, where do you think Clayface's first appearance outside of comic books is?
I really want to say the animated series, but I feel like this is a trick question.
It is a little bit of a trick question, yes.
It's not the Batman 66 series, is it?
It is.
He's in the Batman 66
Well,
series?
here you go. Here's a fun fact. Clayface's first appearance is a brief animated cameo in the opening credits of the Batman 1960s TV series. Oddly, the villain never shows up in the show itself. He's only one of those he's in the animated group of villains.
Yes.
Now, of course, this could be because there's no way they could have ever done Clayface's abilities on that show.
No way. No.
Yep. Now, Clayface has appeared in live action twice.
I didn't know that.
He was a villain on Birds of Prey.
Oh, I didn't know.
And then he just recently showed up on Gotham.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Clayface has basically appeared in every version of the Batman cartoon.
He's a great visual villain. And you said at the beginning.
Yep. And the coolest, of course, I think is Batman the Animated Series, where he's voiced by Ron Perlman, and he's Matt Hagen.
He is Matt Hagen.
So let's move on to the next section, recommended reading.
Yes, where Professor Jason is going to spread his knowledge by recommending things that we read. And you can find all of our recommended readings at geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading. We are filling out our back catalog, so just be patient. They will all be up there eventually.
Yes. First off, I would recommend Forever Evil Arkham War, a trade paperback. That's what I talked about, where Clayface and Bane fight. It's written by Peter J. Tomasi, the new writer of Superman. It's actually a lot of fun. And Bane has his luchador mask and gets the coat from Dark Knight Rises. So he's kind of the mix of the two Banes.
The best of both Banes.
The best of both Banes. And Clayface gets a lot of good and a lot of the series is the build up to the Clayface Bane fight.
Nice.
So there you go.
Cool.
Another one is Gotham Academy Volume 2.
Yes.
because that is all about the daughter of Clayface. It's a very interesting storyline, and we'll talk about Brendan, but it's all about how Boris is getting back at an old actor.
An old actor friend, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like the supervillains that are sort of actors. I think that's kind of a neat touch.
Do you? What does that say about your relationship with actors, Jason?
Let's move on with that. And then the next is a trade called The DC Universe by Alan Moore. It collects a whole bunch of Alan Moore storylines, but it has Batman Annual number 11, which is the storyline where Preston falls in love with the mannequin.
Cool.
It's not too terrible. It's actually pretty. It's because the whole issue is about the relationship between him and this fake woman.
Cool.
So it's kind of interesting. So there you go. And now we're gonna move on to the discussion.
Yes.
Now, for discussion, we couldn't just sit here and talk about Clayface just by ourselves. That would be madness.
Ridiculous.
Yes. So we introduced what we're going to call a Clayface expert. Mm-hmm. He's one of the best dressed men in comic books, and he hails from Ashley's native homeland. This is a comic writer known for runs on Batgirl, Black Canary, plus creating his own stamp on Clayface in Gotham Academy. So please welcome to the podcast, Brendan Fletcher. Brendan, welcome to Geek History Lesson.
Thank you, Jason. I should not be doing a Geek History lesson. I shouldn't be telling anything about Geek History unless it's my own.
Well, I would love to hear the Geek History lesson on you if you have a small one.
Well, I was born a geek, and several decades later, I'm still a geek. And I continue now my geekery as a profession, which is amazing.
That's the best kind of geek history lesson, I think.
You're the person to emulate.
It's living the dream.
Or speaking of living dreams, but dreams that are covered in mud, let's talk about some Clayface. Now, Brendan, how do you see Clayface in the pantheon of Batman villains? And what do you think makes him interesting as a Batman writer?
He's very malleable.
Oh.
Because he's made out of clay. I think there have been so many Clayfaces over the years. So Carl's Clayface design in issue 10 is almost exactly the Batman animated series Clayface design. However, the man under the mud is in fact Basil Carlo. By name, a lot of who he is in personality, Matt Hagen from the show. We tied the character into a theater and film past with our drama teacher in the school, which is also a character from the Batman animated series, who is called the Grey Ghost.
And you also took the step of creating a Clayface of your very own. So can you take us behind the creation of Catherine Carlo? And had you always planned on including her in a theater arc in Gotham Academy?
Yeah, Catherine is... there's a long story behind Catherine and how she came to be as you read her in the comic. We had always intended to do this Clayface story. It was the whole reason behind having Simon Trent as the drama teacher and putting these posters in Olive's room to begin with that featured, Simon Trent starring in films with a woman by the name of Catherine Carlo, who is obviously not Catherine Mapps' young roommate. But that would be Basil's sort of inspiration for giving this aspect of himself the name Catherine. But we had always viewed Catherine, the little Clayface, as nothing more than an aspect of Basil Carlo. So it was like he detached his hand or his arm and sent it off as a sort of agent that could report back to him on the goings-on at Gotham Academy and what was happening in the theater department with his arch nemesis Simon Trent. So Catherine was always just supposed to be this lump that kind of looked like a young lady and was mostly just kind of gross and drippy clay. Mapps didn't see her very much. She kind of kept to herself, so Mapps didn't think much of her. Just that she was the roommate and she didn't get in Maps' hair. And we had her show up in a few earlier issues. For instance, Maps took her to the semi-formal as her date.
Right.
And you can kind of see that she's got this Odo look to her, this nondescript face.
Oh my god, now that you say that, she totally does.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, because I was going to ask you, because we know that Gotham Academy is getting a second series coming up very soon. Is there anything you could tell us about what's in store for the future of Catherine Carlo? Like, is she going to join the Spanish club instead of theater?
I think she's probably going to want to steer clear of theater, although it is in her DNA. But there might be a whole other club that she joins, and it might be one that's masterminded by Headmaster Hammer. So we'll see.
I was going to say, might it be the Detective Club?
Oh, all right.
I don't know. The Detective Club seems pretty full at the moment, but we'll see how it goes.
Now, there is an argument that sometimes Batman faces off with villains that are definitely too powerful for your mere mortals to face down. Do you think that Clayface, in any of them of various genders, do you think that Clayfaces fit that bill? Are they too powerful for Batman?
I don't think anyone is truly too powerful for Batman. I mean,
what a great answer.
You heard it here.
Batman is the ultimate human being, really, at least in terms of how far we can push our bodies. He's also, in a lot of ways, the ultimate degree to which we can push our minds. I think he might have some emotional things to deal with, but it's tough to imagine any foe that he can't get the better of. He fought Superman. He won, didn't he? Kind of.
Yeah.
It depends on which fight you're watching, but yeah, sure.
Right. But it is possible for him to beat the Man of Steel. I don't know. I think compared to Superman, what's Clayface, right? He's a couple of young ladies with a fire hose took him down.
Fair enough.
That's not to say that Clayface is super weak. He's got some weaknesses, and if in certain issues, in certain storylines, he has figured out ways to overcome them. Cough, containment suit, cough. But I think Clayface is not too tough for Batman.
Well, let's flip this to the other side of the dynamic duo. Do you think the Robins, any of the Robins by themselves, with no help from Batman, could take Clayface down?
Yeah, sure. I think you, Jason, could take Clayface down.
Wow, you're throwing Clayface down into the gutter, man.
No, man, look. I love Clayface, but Clayface is at his best, or the Clayfaces are at their best, when they're sneaking, when they're playing a role, when they're able to become someone else or something else and get what they need out of you. They can seem all tough because they can get real large and they can attack and they're shifty. But once you realize that all you need is a bucket of water to get the better of them, I don't know. I mean, unless they're ready for a water attack, that's a pretty substantial weakness, I think.
All right, so now let's pit the big two comics companies against each other. Clayface versus the Spider-Man villain Sandman. Who do you think wins?
Whoever gets to the fire hose first.
Okay, so who do you think is faster, I guess, is the more appropriate question.
So his answer is Hydro Man, the Spider-Man villain Hydro Man.
Yes. Yeah. Let me see. I think that it depends which version of Clayface that you are talking about. I think if it's Basil Carlo, he's probably going to do some underhanded stuff that Sandman wouldn't go in for. So I think Basil Carlo would actually beat Sandman.
Nice.
What about Catherine?
Catherine would run away right now.
I like her style.
And then Spider-Man might flirt with her.
Right,
or Miles Morales would.
Yeah.
Catherine's all about hiding.
Yeah.
But I think also I stick to my guns that is what a Clayface can do best is
subterfuge.
Yep, subterfuge.
Nice. Okay, final question for you. Do you think that we will ever see a strong version of Clayface on the big screen, like in a movie?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, I think if we got a great Sandman, and Thomas Hayden Church might not have been the best movie, but he was a perfect Sandman. And
I agree with you on that one.
I think, there have been more Batman movies than Spider-Man movies, although I think that might be changing in the very near future. But I think Clayface has got to have his chance. I mean, the rumor is that there will be a new Ben Affleck solo Batman movie and that he will be facing all of his villains. And won't it be a shame if Clayface is not among them?
You could even still cast Ron Perlman and it would be an appropriate choice.
Oh my, done.
That would be so great. Ashley, you're a genius.
All right. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for joining us on Geek History Lesson to talk Clayface. Please let our listeners know what books of yours that they should check out and where they can find you on the interwebs.
Well, hey guys, I really didn't have anything directly to do with this book, but as you're listening to this, you should be able to grab yourselves a copy of Gotham Academy Lumberjanes, which will be coming out this week-ish, I think.
Yep.
I actually just read it, and it's amazing. It features the cast from Gotham Academy out in the woods, meeting up with the ladies from Lumberjanes, and it's a fantastic book. It's going to run for 6 issues, so over the summer and into the fall, and there will be a brand new Gotham Academy special in August before we launch into the next semester in September. I'm going to talk a lot more about this online, so you can follow me on Twitter at Brendan Fletcher. I'm also on Tumblr. I'm not on there too much, though. And on Facebook. I'm everywhere under my own name. But I will be giving little previews of all my Gotham Academy stuff, as well as my Image books, which will be coming up in the winter and next spring. That's Motor Crush with my former Batgirl team of Cameron Stewart and Babs Tarr. And that's going to be followed directly by Isola with Gotham Academy artist Carl Kerschel.
Nice. Congrats on those books. And listeners, please go follow him and support him because he was so kind of us, so kind to take his time out to tell us how to beat Clayface with a garden hose. So, Brendan, keep that garden hose handy, and thank you so much.
No problem, guys. You're very welcome.
As a huge fan of Gotham Academy, I could not have asked for a more awesome conversation. What a great discussion.
That's right. And if you want to listen to more of Brendan talking, we have him for more stuff on Geek History Lesson over at our Patreon. But you got to be one of our Patreon donors to hear that episode.
It's true.
It's a really good conversation, and it was a really fun time. And I thank him so much for coming on the podcast. Go pick up his books. He's got all kinds of stuff. He's awesome.
He's the best.
There you go. And as I said, the best dressed man in Canada.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now we're going to move on to the teaching tweet.
Yes, where in 140 characters or less, Professor Jason will put his Clayface thoughts into our brains.
Now, I'm going to say this teaching tweet. It is less than 140 characters. Imagine this to the tune of the Mr. Grinch song.
Okay, I'm ready.
You're a mud man, Mr. Clayface. Why can't you stay out of prison? You're a purely visual threat. That's not an interesting character, Mr. Clayface. That's it.
Well done. We got a new song and a teaching tweet.
I mean, it's the best. Because I kept going over and over in my mind, and I was like, Clayface just shows up, he gets beat. He shows up, he gets beat.
BT Dubs, do you know who narrated How the Grinch Stole Christmas?
Boris Karloff.
Heck yeah.
So we're going full circle. Man, I subconsciously went full circle on this.
There you go.
That's
You're smarter than you know.
Cool, guys. Well, that is it for this long discussion on Clayface, the villain who's just showing up in Detective Comics. By the way, you should go buy that. It's written by a friend of the podcast, James Tynan IV.
That's true.
Who came on here and talked to us about Alfred. So go pick up his first issue because Clayface is going to be a hero And I'm excited to see how's he going to work on a Batman team.
I'm so looking forward to it.
So there you go. I was going to pick that up. You guys can download and listen to all of our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And guys, we want you to go over to iTunes, and we're starting this new thing where we want you to review this podcast. And everybody that reviews, we're going to pick out some of your reviews, and we're going to read them on the air. Now, I have one here. It's very tiny, so I'm trying to read it. A review by Comet Man.
Comet Man.
And Comet Man said on iTunes, I have comic books going back 40 years, but I learned something new with every geek history lesson I learned to. Ashley and Jason's humor, wit, knowledge, and chemistry make this one podcast I can never miss. So thank you for that, Comet Man, over on iTunes. Guys, please go over there to iTunes and review our podcast because you know what? We'll read your review out in the air. So there you go.
And share you with the world.
There you go. Ashley, if they want to suggest a future episode of the Geek History Lesson, if they wanted to actually review the Mudpack, where can they do that?
They can do that on Facebook.com/Geek History Lesson. There's a couple different ways to contact us there, or GeekHistoryLesson.com, where there are some different ways to contact us there.
Yes, and you can throw mud at me on social media at Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin, and you can do the same at Ashley. Don't throw out our eyes. Where?
At Ashley B. Robinson, and yeah, not the eyes. I wear contacts, guys.
There you go. All right, keep that mud away from us. Thanks again to Brendan Fletcher for joining us, and again, you can listen to more of his interview over at patreon.com/Jawiin. That's it for this lesson. I'm Jason. Here's Mud in Your Eye, Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson and Professor Jason. We're putting together such a salient lesson on such a widespread character. Will you please dismiss the class?
Class, just know that the next time you have to face a Clayface, get it? Face a Clayface?
I get it.
You should always bring a Swiffer. Why? Because it's brain approved.
And you heard that here first with the Daily Planet for Metropolis.
Class dismissed.